And hello, this is Audrea.
And we are the Right Crowd. So grab a cup of coffee.
Or a cup of tea.
Or maybe a little something on the rocks. And let's get started.
Yes,
so, speaking of a little something on the rocks, do you ever drink a little something on the rocks?
Not usually at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Well, let's imagine you're watching this at 9 o'clock at night on a Friday.
Yes, I do. Frequently, often, many things.
Okay. I don't. I'm just not. I don't care for the flavor. There are two beverages that I like. I like whiskey sours and Lynchburg lemonades. Really love them blended. It's like a frappe kind of.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really good.
Oh.
However, it's either an extra or one less. I forget which one it is. Enzyme that makes it so my body doesn't process alcohol the right way. So I actually could drink you under the table and not even be drunk.
I was looking that up because I was thinking I was going to add that to one of my characters. Because ever since you told me about that, I was like, that is such a good trait to have. Oh my gosh, I could use that in so many ways. And I was looking it up, but I couldn't find what it was. There was a metabolism one and another one. So we will have to talk about that.
So figure that out. I'll have to ask my dad. But I don't like, which is probably a good thing that I don't like alcohol. I don't like the taste of it because of that issue that I have with enzymes that could probably be bad. And so,
yeah. Well,
especially if you can't tell when you've had too much, because, So anyway, I get it from my dad. Thanks, Dad. And he got it from his mother. And so that's the way I get my hips from my mom. So don't worry. She gave me something too.
Oh, right.
And what are we really supposed to be talking about today, Audrey?
Now I don't know. And I'm sure the audience doesn't either. No.
Well, we warned them when we first started our first video that we're just going to kind of go with it. So
putting it all out there for the most part.
Yeah.
Hips and all.
Hips and all, let me tell you.
We are wrapping up Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. So if you have been watching, this is video number 4 for this book.
Right.
And in this video, we're going over, I call it the back matter, but that's not fair. It's not the back matter. This book has 15 chapters, and we are talking today about the last 2 chapters. But before we talk about the last 2 chapters, I wanted to say a couple of things about the author. So Jessica Brody is the author of the book. Blake Snyder wrote the original book. We talked about that all the way back in the first teaser video or trailer video. So, but Jessica Brody wrote this book. She is a former studio exec of MGM. She was an acquisition manager. She teaches writing classes. She has written over 17 novels, and she writes, what do they call those? She writes for Disney Press as well. So those books about the descendants are not about the novels, the little novels about the descendants and all those. She writes a number of those. So she knows her stuff. Hence, that's why this book is chock full of goodness. So
I want to also say that if you go to her, depending on when you see this, I can say this now because we're recording this in September. I believe it's in October. She is starting a class on Save the Cat. I know. I
can't take any more classes, although I want to take one of hers.
I will say that it's information is on her website, savethecat.com. And I believe that it's a recurring class. So say you see this video in December or January, that doesn't mean you missed the boat. You just missed that one. It's one, and it's actually in one of her last 2 chapters, she goes over that she teaches writing classes and gives you her website. So just wanted to let everybody know that there is one coming up. Depending on when you watch this, you might be right on time to get in on one of her classes. Don't know the cost. It's not free, but just so everybody knows that that's something you can look into if you want to dive deeper into this and learn from Jessica.
Yeah. And as you mentioned before, Save the Cat has software. So if you want to use the Save the Cat, the 15 beats and all of that structure, to write your book, you can use the software to do that. There's I believe it's a Save the Cat template for Scrivener.
All the things.
Sure, all the things, basically,
Yes.
all the things, which I love.
think there's a Scrivener one, and I think there's one for another. I just don't remember what the other one is, but I think there are 2 templates.
Okay.
I just don't remember what the other one is.
Neither. There is also the Save the Cat cards, which I still have not investigated. I'm probably going to investigate those and get those.
I'm writing that down now because I forgot, and I'm the one who told you.
Yes, I know. So if you cannot tell, I mean, we are spoiling the end here. We obviously love this book. And we will put all of these links and more in the show notes. So let's get started with talking about the rest of the book. Chapter 14, Pitch It to Me.
So what's interesting is, as I was reviewing to figure out what I wanted to bring up, I feel like in 2 chapters, I have more sticky tabs than I had like in the first 5 chapters. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to say too much because then it like gives stuff away. But I'm like, oh, but that's important. Oh, but that's important. So hopefully between the 2 of us, we're able to rein it in and not give too much information so that people still, because the point of this is not so you get all the information from us, so you don't buy the book. The point is that we give you all the little teasers where you're like, oh, I need that book, and you go buy it.
Yes.
And then you learn from it and love it just like we do. So
this is your online or YouTube book club, Writing Craft Book Club. That's what we do.
Yes, exactly. And so we are starting with chapter 14. This is what this one is about. 14 and is it just 14 and 15? Because that's all there is,
14
right?
and 15, yes.
Yes, cool. Okay, so the Pitch It to Me, I kind of feel like it tells you what the chapter is about. It's your pitch, right? And your pitch is, what is your book about? And she discusses 2 different kinds. One where it's a sentence, like if someone goes, oh, you're writing a book, what's it about? You're going to, in one sentence, it can be a short sentence, it can be a long sentence, but in one sentence, you tell them what it's about. The other one is what's on the back of the book. You're in a bookstore, someone picks up your book and they're like, oh, by the way, your cover is what's really going to get people's attention, just so you know. Okay, side note, I literally bought a book this week from an author. I don't even know if it's her first book. It could have been her 50th. I have no idea. Her cover caught my eye and I was like, oh, what's that about? I bought the book because her cover caught my attention. So just keep that in mind. So someone sees your cover and they're like, ooh, what's that about? The other pitch is what's on the back of the book, so that someone reads it and go, oh, I want to read this. I need to know what happens, right? So those are the 2 different kinds of pitches.
So that short one sentence, that's your log line. And you get a log line, you do a log line for a movie, you do a log line for a novel. If you're trapped in an elevator, that's your pitch, your log line, your short one sentence one. And reading that part, I finally, because I've taken lots of classes and I struggled with the log line and I've struggled with the premise. The funny thing is I bought this book and read most of it and I struggled through the 15 beats and then I put it up on the shelf and then I took it down and I worked through the genres and I worked through the beats again and I did the work and I put it on the shelf. And then when I was doing the Stop Writing Alone, I was doing a contest and I needed to do a log line and I needed to do a synopsis. And I was struggling, Googling a synopsis and banging my head against the wall, trying to figure out how to write a synopsis for my book. And then we started to do this book and I got to this chapter and there was the short synopsis, that longer one that goes on the back there, perfectly outlined, perfectly understandable. And I just wanted to bang my head. It's like, it was on my shelf the whole time. I was struggling.
Read the whole book, not just the first time, but even the second time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the trouble with using some of these books as reference books and not reading them from cover to cover.
Which is what I try to, even if I know I'm going to use it as a reference, I try to read it cover to cover. And I might not fully read it, but I want to know everything that's in it. So I know where to go back. And I want to say that something you just pointed out is the way that she writes is easy to understand and it's easy to follow. Like she doesn't use a lot of big words where you're like, where's my dictionary? Like you know what she's talking about when she says it. And then some parts she'll say it, and then she breaks it down even to smaller terms so that she's like, this is what she means by when she said this. So something that I like about how she presents it. The other thing that she talks about is when you do your pitch, you want it to be just enough to lure them in, but keep them wanting more. Mm. So you want to give like the cliffhanger in the plot, in the pitch. You want to give like the cliffhanger. So they're like, oh, wait a minute. How's that going to work? Yes, I need to read this, right? And then they're telling, oh, I found this book and blah, 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 blah. So now they're telling their friends about this awesome book that they haven't even read yet, just because it sounds fabulous.
Speaking of how easy it is to read, these are my notes from the first time. You can see I wrote, got it. Finally, I got it. Brilliant. This is just for the log line. It was when I was trying to do mine. It's like, what? Finally. It's like a light bulb went off over my head. That's what these people mean by a short pitch or a log line. She lays out the structure. That's what I really like, the structure of a log line. So you can, and then she gives you an example, applies that structure to a couple of different log lines for different books that she's used in this book. Which she
also gives you a template.
Yes.
So like, if you're like, I have no idea. Okay, well, here's her template. On the verge of a flawed hero, but when the blank happens, like she gives you like fill in the blank, and if you did your beats the right, I'm not going to say the right way. If you did them a way that adequately describes and goes through your story, this will be easy to fill in. These blanks will be easy to fill in. And she even points out that if you have a problem, like you're really struggling to fill in, she does a template for the short synopsis as well. If you're having trouble, go back to your beats and see where your beats are missing. Because if it should literally be on the verge of, oh, I know what this is because my beat said this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And if you get to the end and you read it and you're like, that's not very attention grabbing, or that's not what the book is supposed to be about, go back to your beats. What do your beats say? Like, how do you need to change your storyline to make it match what you want your book to be about?
Right. And what I also like, and it kind of makes you mad, especially if you're a person who has struggled with a log line. What she says in here is, if you cannot summarize your story in one sentence, then you might not know what your story is about. And so you need to do some more work, because you should be able to match up your any story, War and Peace, Harry Potter, the Fault in Our Stars, Hunger Games, all those, you should be able to synopsize, to summarize those in one sentence that leaves a reader going, and then what happens? Oh yeah, really? And if you can't do that, then you need to go back to the beginning and see where your flaw is, why you can't get into one sentence.
And I want to point out, these are her sentences for some of the books that she did. If you look, it's one sentence, but it's not like Harry went to the store and bought a dozen eggs. Like, it's a detailed sentence that covers all the things. So keep that in mind, that we're not talking a short, simple sentence. I mean, it can be, it could be, but it doesn't have to be. Like the one on Ready Player One is 8 lines long for her sentence. So just keep that in mind.
Well, yeah, she definitely breaks out the complex sentence structure, and they all do. And that's one of the other classes, which I won't talk about. I had to do, they called it a premise. I had to do, and it had to be in one sentence. And I, Miss Grammar person, I have to have a period here, and then I start a new thought, and then, but it was short, and it was just as short as this, but it was more than one sentence, and I got dinged every time. You have to get it into one sentence. Therefore, you have to break out that complex structure. You have to use your commas wisely and break out a semicolon, y'all.
They're allowed in the middle of sentences. And that's what makes them not a run-on sentence. Like,
yeah. So it has to be grammatically correct, Yes,
Yes.
it does have to be grammatically correct, but still one sentence.
Now, the other thing that I want to point out is that she does talk about, because it's not a short, simple sentence, you might be worried about giving away too much. So one of the things that she points out is that you want to hint, you don't want to spell out, you want to hint, but you don't want to hide too much, because they call that hiding the ball. And she said, then you leave your reader blasé. They can't really figure out what your story's about. And for some people, it may not be worth it to figure out what your story's about. Mm-hmm. I'm one of those people. If I read the back of the book and I'm like, wait, what? No, I put it back. It could be a fabulous book, but if you haven't really given me what the story is about, or you've given me too much, like there's movie trailers where my husband and I will be watching it and we'll be like, stop watching.
Too much.
Because they're telling us, they're giving the whole movie.
They do. They've gotten better, but you're right. There are a lot of trailers like,
oh, that person's gonna die? Okay, great, thanks. I didn't want to know that yet, but so make sure that you're not hiding too much, but also don't give too much away. Okay. What's next?
All right. Yes. So that is that chapter 14. It's all about the logline, how to write it, the structure, some great examples, as well as the short synopsis template, which is awesome.
Yes.
And she breaks that down. You've got paragraph 1, that's your setup. That's where you talk about that flawed hero that you built back in the beginning of the book, and a catalyst. She tells you it's 2 to 4 sentences. And then
she breaks it down. Like, this is what it is.
And then the same thing for paragraph 2 and paragraph 3. So you've got 3 sentences. So this is a short synopsis. This is not a long synopsis. I've had to do a long synopsis. That was painful too. And I just want to say, dear Miss Jessica Brody, would you please break down and do a long synopsis as well, please? But those are hard. But I love the way she's broken down the short synopsis. She gives you the template of how to write it. She, of course, gives you examples. And that's basically chapter 14. Did you want to go into anything more on the short synopsis?
Yes. At the bottom of at the very end of this chapter, she points out what we said also about the logline. The short synopsis is a test to make sure you nailed your beats and your story resonates. When you're done with this, if it's not following, go back to your beats and see what it is. And then she says, if you fix those beats, I promise you, your short synopsis will shine. So if you follow her stuff and it doesn't work, go back to your beats and see where not necessarily where you missed it, but maybe you didn't bring out the best piece of that beat for your synopsis. Figure out how you need to change it up. Okay, that's all I wanted to say on that.
And I will say, I can't remember what I was going to will say, but yes, that's.
You can pop it in later.
Yes, I will. All right. We'll move on to chapter 15, which is called Save the Author. You've got problems. I got problems.
No.
No?
You got problems. I got solutions.
All right. Take that part out. Just take that part.
Okay. So start over. Chapter 15. What's it about?
Chapter 15 is next, and that is you got problems, I got solutions. And that's where she breaks down some common problems she's heard in her teaching career, she's seen in her career reading, doing acquisitions, and also with people who've had trouble with the book, because she used to teach the book and do short papers on the book, classes, webinars, and things like that before she wrote the full book. She was teaching the structure that she got from Blake Snyder.
This is also where she gives you her web address and talks about her classes that she teaches. So this part is where that all comes up. And she calls them Save the Cat workshops. So just so you know. Something I want to point out is that she likes to start with what she calls her 5 foundational beats. And she says that if you can get these in place, then you're more likely to be able to follow through on the rest of them. And she says that they are the catalyst, break into 2, midpoint, break into 3, and all is lost. So if you're able to figure these out, you should be able to transform the journey into how you're visualizing it's going to be. She also says that there's 3 components that she nails down. And then to do that, she has a list of questions that she goes through to make sure her 3 components are taken care of. And they're able to get her into those 5 foundational beats to where her story is able to follow the way she wants it to, flow the way she wants it to.
Right. And I will say that I'm in the middle of a revision of my my first novel, and well, not my first novel. It's the first one that's going to go to publication. There are many behind this one that will never see the light of day. But I'm in revisions, and I will be double checking my 5 foundation beats and looking at these questions on the current work in progress. So this is great for not just starting, because the beginning of this section is called Help, Where Do I Start? And she talks about those 5 foundation beats. Because she says people often struggle with, they get all of this information, they get bogged down in the 15 beats and building their heroes, flaws and needs and things like that. And that she gives them those 5 foundation beats. Those are great at the beginning. They're also great when you're doing revisions or review, trying to fix a novel.
Right. I think sometimes you could probably, when you're revising and something's not working out, you could probably go back to these foundations and see if any of them are where the issue is.
Mm-hmm.
The next part of this chapter is she talks about Save the Cat board.
And I oh, go ahead.
No, please go.
I love me some structure. So I got really excited when she talks about breaking out a cork board, or in my case, it's a magnetic whiteboard and 3x5 cards, and mapping out all of your beats. And she gives a great example. If you got the audiobook, you get a PDF so that you can see what this looks like. But she gives a great example of how to break out all your beats and how many cards you're going to have. And when she said how many cards she had, for one example was 91 cards. And she breaks them down by word count, which is awesome.
Yeah.
What were you going to say about the Save the Cat board?
There's also a virtual one as well on her website. So you don't, if you're like one of those people where you're like, I don't want to have to write it down, I want to type it, there is a virtual one. And the other thing is, one of the things that she points out after she goes through the word count of, here's how many words and this is how many cards, she points out that if you're still in the brainstorming, don't worry about how many cards you have. Get all your ideas out, like put them all out there. And then in the process of figuring out your board, you'll be able to figure out which ones you're going to use. And who knows, you could be brainstorming. That's a new word. You could be brainstorming, and in your brainstorm, come up with another idea that you didn't realize would be an idea for a different book. So don't feel like you have to stick to what your idea is originally. Like if an idea comes, put it out there, because you never know, it may fit in this one, it may go into another one. She actually goes into, help, I'm writing a series, right? So what if one of your brainstorms for this book turns into actual material and matter for your second or your third book that you didn't even know you were going to be writing? Which is, I think, what happens with a lot of people. They don't realize they're writing a series until it happens.
Yeah.
So,
and for me, I, started out writing a series. So it was awesome to get to this part of the book on my third reading.
When you actually finish the book.
And see the 15 beats applied to series. That's a really cool section of the book, and how she applies it, and how you can have act 1 be book 1, and so forth.
She also talks about if you have more than one main character, and how you would break down, and you might actually have multiple beat sheets, because beat one is for this character. Well, guess what? Beat one is also for this character. Like she breaks it down and helps you figure out how you can work multiple sheets. She also suggests that you study authors that have multiple main characters to see how they did it. It's kind of like, why would you reinvent the wheel? Like if there's an author that's done it well, why would you not see how they've done it?
Yeah.
And see if it's something that you can adapt for your own use and your own whatever.
One of the other sections, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Then when you talk about that, she actually gives you a couple examples of different, when you have multiple characters and different points of view and what different points of view are. Like there are some points of view I didn't even know existed. I'm just going to say, I'm like, wait, what is that? So she breaks this, she gives you 5 different points of view to help you figure out, and then gives you examples. So like, if you're like, oh, I think this is it, she gives you examples of books that you can go back and look at.
Which is nice. POV is, I mean, when you're writing a novel, when you actually start writing and determining what POV point of view you're going to use, it's not your grammar school POV that you learned back in school. Like there were only 3, I think, back then. There are some, you can get into some deep POV, and she explains some of those in here, which is nice, because every time I read anything where they're talking about POV, I have to sit down and study it, because POV is not as simple as I used to think it was.
Nope. It's not white bread anymore. You got some rye in there. You got some pumpernickel. Like you got choices you got to make. Right. None of them are the same. So they might look the same, but they're not the same.
Exactly.
Okay. And then the last part of this, well, there's 2 more parts, I think, is she goes into the series and how that breaks down, which we already talked about, but she breaks that down for you. And then she breaks down help. My hero is unlikable.
Yeah.
Which takes us to saving a cat, which in my book, it would be saving a dog. I mean, cats are great, but I'm a dog person. So I would be saving the dog. And if you hurt the dog, you're dead in the next chapter, just so you know.
Don't mess with the dog.
Don't mess with the dog. You might not even make it to the end of the chapter.
Oh, yeah. She's going to go John Wick on you.
You have no idea.
Which is cool, because she uses an example of one of her own books where she does use a dog to make the character more likable. That's one of the things she uses. She doesn't just use a dog, but she talks about how she used a dog, how that worked out for her in that book.
Yeah, you want to give them a redeeming quality and something that people can relate to, so that they are likable. They may not be likable to everybody, but you want to get them likable enough that people aren't putting your book down.
Yes,
because they don't care what happens to your hero.
And I'll give you an example of an unlikable character who has redeeming qualities. If anybody reads the Agatha Raisin series, it's not the books, not the TV show. Agatha Raisin is a horrid woman. She just is not very nice. She's snobbish. She aspires to a greater station than she has. She's rude. Oh my goodness, she's rude. However, if she sees a battered wife, she tries to help them. She's tried to help them get out of a bad situation. She's kind to her best friend. She'll do anything in the world for her best friend. She'll spend whatever money, and she's not just throwing money around. She genuinely wants to help her best friend. And you see how she's trying to make friends, and it's difficult for her because she's a horrid person. But you just see that part of her. And so that's what kept me reading Agatha Raisin books. 20 books in, I'm still reading Agatha Raisin going, this woman is just, why can't she just be nice? I don't understand.
But she is nice to battered women and her best friend.
It is, yes, yeah. She does have a flaw, though, that just grates on that flaw that she has. It just drives me bonkers, but I still reading. So yeah, that section on how to help you know, how to make your character more likable is a really helpful one. And it's also great to pull back the curtain. And that's what she does for you when she talks about that, pulling back the curtain on how it's done in movies, again, and how it's done and how you can do it in your book.
Right. And then the last part, she says, give yourself permission to write badly.
Yeah, that's hard. That's so hard.
It's called a rough draft for a reason. Some people call it a zero draft because they know nothing out of that draft is going to actually make it to the book.
Yeah.
Your first part is not about getting it right. It's about getting words on the page. Yeah. And it's okay. It's supposed to suck, I think. I don't think it's supposed to be perfect. There was a class that I took online probably about this time last year. And actually, I think it was in October because it was with the Florida Writers Association. They took their conference and they put it online. And I'm pretty sure this is the conference that I was listening to. And they had a panel of editors that they were talking to. And publishers, a panel of publishers. And they asked the publishers, how many edits do you expect the writer to have before you will do something with their book? Every one of them said that if they haven't gone through their book at least 10 times, I'm not talking to them.
Wow, 10 times.
One of them was like, I forget if they said it was like 30. Like they're like, they don't want to have to do any editing when they get it. They want to read it and have it be an almost polished book. So for anyone who's watching this and you think you're going to write a book and you're going to reread it once and you're going to fix a grammatical error and it's going to be ready, I'm sorry to say that's probably not going to happen. And
highly unlikely.
Really publishing, like if you're going to work on getting an agent and going with a traditional publisher, once is not going to cut it. They're not even going to be interested because they know how bad it's going to be because it hasn't been chopped and pasted back together. So keep that in mind. It's gonna suck and it's okay. It's supposed to. Mm-hmm. Don't feel bad. Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm editing it for the 15th time. Fabulous. That means it still needs to be edited. Keep going. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Endless edits and revisions. Just, oh my God, yeah. It's okay. It's okay. And she addresses that struggle. She addresses a couple of other struggles in the back of the book that she's encountered with writers. And that's nice. I really like in this last chapter, what she does is she tells you, I like how she talks about being flexible with the beats. So for those of you who, when you talked about the beats, when we first talked about them and you dreaded the F word, that's for formula. That's the F word we're talking about.
We don't say the other F word on this.
Not on this channel. But she talks about being flexible because your beats will change and they change as you go through a revision. And she gives a great example. And she also says something that people should know, that, you know, you don't compare your work in progress to someone's finished masterpiece. That's not fair to you. It's really unfair to you. But she gives an example of one of her books, The Geography of Lost Things. And she goes through all 15 beats and she does a before and after. And she tells you the genre and all the other stuff that she does and the page count, which is really helpful. And it's a published book. And it's really cool to see that before and after, how it changed as she was revising the book and getting it to its finished state.
Right. Yep. And to go back to not comparing your work in progress to someone else's masterpiece, it's kind of, okay, all things social media, right? So it's the same concept of you see someone's fabulous life on social media, Instagram or whatever, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, look what they have. Well, that's because they're showing you their best piece. They're not putting all of the nasty on there. They're putting like the polished and the whatever, right? So it's the same way in this. Like you wouldn't, or hopefully you wouldn't, maybe you do, you shouldn't, compare what you're going through right now with someone else's polished Instagram reel. right? Because they're only going to show you the polished piece. They're not going to show you the 50 times that they tried to record the dance that they couldn't figure out. They're just going to show you the last one that they finally figured out and they got it right. Right. So it's the same thing with this. Don't compare the process you're going through with Stephen King or James Patterson or Faye Kellerman or anything like that. Those, you don't know the process they went through to get there. You don't. All you see is the final piece. So your goal is to get there at some point. But I mean, think about it. There aren't a lot of people where their first book hit #1 and every book after stayed at #1. There's not a lot of people like that. It's a progress, and you have to keep yourself grounded in the fact that it is a progress and there's steps to take and you'll get there.
Yes.
But don't compare where you are to where they are, because you're not on the same step.
Right. You don't put
I'm not even in the building, right? I'm out at the gate trying to get in. And I'm comparing it to the owner of the mansion, right? So just keep that in mind.
Right. You do not put toddlers in the driver's seat.
Ooh, no. That would be a bad idea.
That would be super bad idea.
Bad idea.
So their feet can't even reach the pedals. It'd be cray. So that is Save the Cat Writes a Novel. That's the back side, the last 2 chapters. We've been through the whole book with you. We walked through the beginning, the beats, how to create a character, these exercises, which got highlighted and I use over and over again for my book. I even have a little worksheet that I use now because you can only write in a book so many times.
Yeah.
Unless you're using a erasable pen, but eventually you'll just go right through that paper. So
erasable pen, what is that?
What? Okay, so Amy knows I'm addicted.
No, yes. I didn't know until you told me about them. So what is an erasable pen, Audrea?
Well, it's not the erasable pen from the 80s and 90s. I believe they had them back then. It is, oh golly, do I even have one over here? I've got one.
It was like, let me see if I have one. Well, actually what I have are the highlighters.
Oh yeah, I've got the highlighters too. Love me some erasable pens. And
so they're the ones that we're talking about are from Friction.
Yes. Friction. Yeah, good show.
Yep.
Oh, and I have this version. This is another one. This is the Japanese version of the Friction ball. Let's see if I can get it up there so you can read it. But it is a super fine line, super thin, and it's refillable. But they are erasable pens and they erase beautifully, unlike the ones did back in the day. They erase beautifully. The one downside
I was gonna say, but keep in
mind that they either it's a feature or a flaw. They've sold it before as a feature that they if the ink disappears with high heat. So if you write in a journal and leave your journal in a hot car, when you come back, you will have a blank journal. They used to tell you, or when I saw advertisements for them in the beginning, it's like you can write in this calendar. It was a planner that came with them, write in the planner. And then at the end of the year, you put your planner in the microwave or in the oven at a really low.
That's these guys, because I heard about that. And I'm like, why would anybody do that?
Because it completely goes away. So don't write anything you need to keep. Do not sign checks with these pens, but they're great for writing in books. They're great for writing your first draft in cool temps. But I love them. I love me some erasable Friction pens. And I even have an off-brand. This is the off-brand that I like. It's called the Parku. Parku is one of the
I haven't seen that one.
They have different colors. Same
yes, Sandy. Do you want to say hi?
I don't. So we digress. So we were ending on Save the Cat. So in the summary, is this book worth the purchase? Yes. Should you? Is it for beginners or advanced writers? Yes. It is for both. It'll help you with your first novel. It'll help you revise your novel, and it'll help you when you're trapped in the murky middle of your 15th or 50th novel. I think it's a definite purchase for writers of all.
And how has it changed your writing?
It has improved my writing, actually. I have gone through, thank you for asking, Amy.
You're welcome.
Well, before I read this book, I was really struggling to understand what beats were. People kept talking about, I'd go to these author conferences or be in these webinars, and they'd be talking about the beats and getting the beats right. And there are, I guess.
And the beat is in act what? And I'm like, what is an act? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. So this really helps to break down a structure of, and even if you're writing a literary book, so you're not trying to write a genre book, a contemporary genre book, this book will help you to understand the structure of books that are popular and that have made a lot of money, basically. Hundreds of books, she's profiled hundreds of books throughout time, from like Ebenezer Scrooge, what's that one? A Christmas Carol, all the way up to Ready Player One. These are the same beats that she has, analyzed and found in all of those. So you can, if you want to break the rules, it's really good to know what the rules are before you start breaking them and moving them around. This will help with that. So, and it's great whether you're a pantser or planner, or plotter rather. If you're a plotter, this will help you plot out the book, outline the book to the beats and so forth. If you're a pantser, and once you've got your draft out and you might be struggling with a particular part, this book will help you to figure out and move those pieces around. And I do that a little bit with my books. I write out of order and then I move the pieces around and I figure out, do I have, now that I've read this book, when I'm looking at the book, do I have the all is lost moment? Is that one of the scenes? That's what I'm doing right now, trying to find all the scenes and put them in the right order. It's maddening. And this is something we'll probably talk about another episode. Try to narrow down all the writing tools you use and don't write over here and write over here and write over here, and write over here. Because then you're like, I know I wrote this scene, but where is it?
But where is it? And then you rewrite it and then you find the original scene later because
wasted time. So yeah, that we'll have to do a show just on that. Anyway, so what do you think about the book? What's your summary, Amy?
So I was a pantser before I read Save the Cat. And I have become more of, is it called a planter? Where you're kind of both a little bit. So it has helped me in the middle grade fantasy that I'm writing right now, because it's helped me figure out where my story needs to go and what pieces I need to make sure are there to keep it going. Because as I discovered in this, as I was going through the beats for my book, I'm actually going to be writing a series. And it's helping me figure out what I need to have in place in this first book to make it the right material to make someone want to pick up the second book. So it's actually changed. Like I used to just sit down and write and be like, oh, and then like just go with it. And now I have moments where I've written something out, I'll go to the next beat and be like, oh, and I go back to the previous beat and put something in because I thought of it. But now I can make sure that the story connects and I'm not sitting there going, okay, so this happened and this happened and it needs to go here, but I don't know what to do in the middle.
Right. The
beats help you figure out what the middle is supposed to be so that it's a flow of getting to where it needs to be to keep your reader engaged. So I'm glad that we discovered this and that we read it with Stop Writing Alone, because I don't know that I would have picked it up because it's about plotting and I didn't plot. What I will say is that when I first started writing, I thought it would be really cool to do a screenplay. Mm-hmm. And I have the original Save the Cat for the screenwriting. And so when this one came up, I was like, oh, wait, no, I had that one. And then I pulled it out and I was like, no, I don't have that one. Okay, so I guess I got to get this one because we're all reading it together, even though I'm not interested in reading it. Well, as it turns out, it's exactly what I needed. So
yeah, me too. Yeah. I started out writing screenplays. I'd never thought of writing a book, I don't think, until I must have been the first time I did NaNoWriMo. Speaking of that, hey, let's move on to what we're talking about next week. So we've wrapped up the book. We both give it thumbs up. And I say thank you to Miss Jessica Brody on that.
Yes. And oh, before we go to that, what book are we doing next?
That's right. We are doing
This is Book of the Month, and it's broken down to where, yeah, she's got the fancy dancy one with the little whatever. I have a regular one. I didn't know hers existed when I bought it. Anyway, this breaks it down and helps you figure out how to write a book in a month. Obviously, this would be your rough draft, your zero draft, your final draft. And the thing I love about this is that because of the way this is written and broken down, you can actually use it together.
That's true.
Because there's the beats. Like if you follow her timeline with her beats and her structure, you could actually do this.
Yeah.
So this is the next book that we will be discussing, and it won't be next week. It'll be the following week. Next week, we are discussing
NaNoWriMo.
And what is NaNoWriMo?
NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month. It's an annual thing. It happens every year, hence annual.
Annual.
It's a time when writers get together in the month of November and write 50,000 words to write a book in a month, basically, a novel of 50,000 words, which for most genres is 50,000 words is not a complete novel. But we'll talk more about that when we talk more about NaNoWriMo next week, or
Right.
when our next episode comes out.
Yes. Yes. So, it was something else I wanted to, you said writers get together. Just so you know, we don't actually like get together. Like it's just a collective online. Now there may be some groups when we're not in the situation that we are in right now. There are local chapters of NaNoWriMo that will get together in coffee shops every day and write together. Right now, there's not a lot of that going on. It's all virtual, but it's literally people around the world do this in November. So they have a website and everything. So we'll talk about all of that in our next video.
Right.
Is there anything else, Audrea?
I don't think there is. Amy?
I think this is probably our longest video.
I was just wondering how long it was, but maybe, but let's go ahead and end it here.
Yes. All right, guys. So we'll see you next week, and have a fabulous day.
Yep. Make sure to check out the website and use the links in our show notes for buying any of the books if you want to read along with us.
We'll also have a link for savethecat.com, so you can go directly there.
Yep. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.